scripture reading. As I mentioned, we're going to be continuing today on our Sermon on the Mount series that I'm doing. We're looking at the Beatitudes, which is the first part of the Sermon on the Mount. Last week, if you weren't here, just recap real briefly. We covered the first three in one week. It was talked about. It was like Jesus teaching his disciples. He's not talking to the crowd. He's talking to his disciples. It's like a first day of school, we said, right? It was like a lecture on the first day of class. And he covered three things that kind of went together: is blessed, it's a poor in spirit. He talked about what that actually meant was an emptying out of ourselves, right? A repenting, recognizing that we're sinful and our need to repent, and emptying out of ourselves so God can fill us with his goodness, right? And that blessed are those who mourn, that was a mourning for our sin, sadness within us. And once we recognize that we are sinners and the sin in the world, and the effects of that sin, not only on ourselves, but on other people, there was a mourning type process, right? And blessed are those who are meek, and not in a way that we usually think of meek, but a controlled power, that we are to walk humbly before God, because ultimately God has the final say, but walk humbly among men, because we're supposed to have a servant's heart, right? And a servant's heart would be one that is humble, right? Now, if that was the first day of class, that's a lot, wasn't it, in itself? Without even getting into the rest of the Beatitudes, that's a lot to take in, isn't it? If you think about that, if you were the disciples and that was your first lesson and Jesus started saying, blessed are the poor, how many of us would have raised our hands up? I need to go to the counselor's office because I think I need to talk about a class change. You know, I'm all about the blessedness and the being happy, but I don't really, poor in spirit, mourning, meek, I'm not sure those are things I signed up for. I'm more like conquering the Roman Empire. I mean, I want to free Jerusalem. I mean, probably not the things that they expected to hear, was it? And today we continue on, and we're going to look at something. His next verse, which is a very simple. Last week was a long journey. I mean, like I said, it's a lot to take in. Three Beatitudes in 1 week is a lot to take in. This week I'm going to slow it down really slow. That's good news for you. That means a short sermon. We're going to take one verse, one sentence, and we're going to work with that today. And it talks about, it says, what? Blessed are those which do hunger and thirst, for they shall be filled, right? Hunger. Hunger is an interesting thing. How many of you think you've been hungry before? Well, I guess hunger has a lot of different definitions. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, because it really depends on where you're at when you look at it from a world point of view. Because there's levels of hunger. There's hunger for those people who don't eat very often, say, once a week. Who are mothers watching their children starve because there's no food and there's none to be had. That's one kind of hunger, isn't it? Now, I dare say probably none of you have experienced that. Is that correct? We see commercials about that, right, at the holidays, right? With the children, with their extended stomachs, and there's no meat on any of their bones, except we turn the channel really quick because we don't want to feel bad about the food we just threw away for Thanksgiving. But that's one kind of hunger, right? But there's another kind of hunger, that, kind of like what Pam experienced in Haiti, where people eat maybe every other day, one meal every other day, or a meal a day. And that's a type of hunger, right? And then there's probably the hunger that and I'd say most of us haven't experienced that, but not knowing your backgrounds, because I know there are some places in this country that actually happens too, where people eat once a day, or growing up during the Great Depression, there's a lot of people who didn't eat very often. So you may have experienced that. I'm not saying you didn't. So you may know that hunger, but that's one type of hunger. But the hunger that most of us, I think, is that is that gnawing pain in our stomach that tells us that we need to pull into McDonald's and get a supersized fry and a Coke because we only ate 2 hours ago, but it's already starting to feel a little hungry, right? Right? You know what I'm talking about. You smiling, I know you know what I'm talking about. But that's kind of the hunger that we feel. We don't really know, or the hunger that comes having to wait like 20 more minutes because the rolls aren't ready, you know. And we got to have rolls with our dinner, so we got to wait 20 minutes. But I'm hungry now, right? Or waiting for the preacher to finish so we can go eat, that kind of hunger. That's the kind most of you are familiar with. I think everybody can relate to that one. Okay, I get it. And I have to tell you the truth, I don't know much about being hungry myself, as you can see. But I do know a lot about being hangry. You know, have you ever been hangry, you know, where you're hungry enough to be irritable? You ever been there? You've never been hungry enough where you're irritable? It's not a good place to be. And it's not a good place to be around me. I'm probably not the most pleasant. We got to find food, and we got to find it now. And if you people who deal with a low blood sugar know that where you start to crash, and you got to have food right now. I mean, I've had that where I've had that crashing feeling that I just throw everything I can find in my mouth. It don't matter if it's cooked or not cooked. I got to eat something. And there's that kind of hunger. So we can agree that there's different kinds of hunger, right? And that we probably don't know about that deep hunger. As a matter of fact, we're probably one of the best fed places in the world in the United States. And we're blessed. I mean, that's a blessing. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But the people of Jesus' age, they wasn't as much prosperity back then. They probably knew exactly what he was talking about when he talked about hunger. When he talked about being hungry. That longing to have that need filled, that to have your stomach full, right? And I think we all know enough about our type of hunger that we have a similar type feeling, right? We know what it is to been out working all day and you come home and you want to eat, right? You're ready to eat. Where's my food, right? That hunger. So we know what Jesus is talking about, right? When he says hunger. It's that desire, right? It's that desire or that longing for that need to be met, right? For that internal need to be met. And the same can be said about thirst, right? Because it says hunger and thirst. And none of us have ever probably walked. Anybody here walk through the desert with a horse with no name? No. The older people get that, young people. But walk through the desert where you're just dry thirst, looking for that water hole, right? Quench that thirst. We've probably never been that kind of thirsty, right? But you may have played a sports at some time, or been out in the field working, sweating, and just parched, right? Your throat's dry, and your mouth's dry, and you need some what? You need some water, right? You need some water. So we all know, I think, that there's a danger for going without either one of those things. Water or food for any prolonged period of time, right? That if you don't eat and you don't drink water, what happens? Eventually, you die. That's it, you die. So they're essential for life, right? So there are things to be desired, things that we should seek out. And in some places in the world, that is their daily activity. It's not, I go and do a job. It's how do I find food and how do I find water so tomorrow I can wake up and look for food and water. You see, because it's about survival. It's a very deep internal longing or desire for something. Right? So how does that fit in with righteousness? You know, I think we long and desire for a lot of things in this country. We long and desire for fancy clothes or clothes that make us look nice, right? You know, that everybody likes. Matching shoes, you know. You gotta have the matching shoes and the purse, right? Not the men. You don't have to have a purse. I mean, the ladies, they know what I'm talking about. Men, you just need the tie that goes with the suit, right? But we long for those things: a bigger house, a nicer house, a faster car, a newer car, a car that runs. Some people just, depends on where you're at. Right? But we always want something more. right? A bigger boat, a nicer boat, a newer gun, a fishing rod, a newer vacuum. Nobody desires a newer vacuum, let's get real. But you know what I'm saying, is that we always want something more than what we got. We want something, and then we get it, and then we want something else. And the goodness of what we thought, that excitement we got going out and buying a new car, usually ends right about the time that the bank mails you the payment book. You ever notice that? I remember my first car, I was so excited I got that thing, and then I got that payment book, and it just wasn't exciting. Right? It's temporary. The things that we long for, the things that we want to put in our lives are temporary. They're temporary things. That excitement doesn't last. You know, we're trying to fill our need with something of this world, something that's temporary, something that's going to make us get hungry again, something that's going to make us get thirsty again in no time, something that's going to leave us longing and wanting again, something that's going to disappoint us eventually, right? Isn't that usually what happens? Right? You know, it's kind of like going out for a fancy meal. No, I don't know if you've ever experienced this. But going out for a fancy meal. You know, all your friends have talked about this new fancy restaurant. Got this high-dollar cuisine. You know, it's the place to go if you want to take somebody for something special. You know, it's just, so you go. I ain't talking about McDonald's with coupons. This is real food. I know. I've been there myself. And but you go to this fancy place, and you get there and you open the menu. You all dressed up. You even skip lunch because the food was going to be so fabulous here. And you open the menu and you almost choke because you see the prices are half your week's pay is the price of this food, right? You know what I'm talking about. And you sit there and you read them and you finally find something you think you like and you order it and you wait and you have like delightful conversation waiting for the food to come and you sit there and they bring you this plate. And there's just so much plate. Lots and lots of plate. But so little food. And it's so fancy that they took the green beans and they stacked them so nicely on that tablespoon of rice, on about 3 ounces of meat, and they took some sauce and painted some lines, and it's beautiful. But there's so much plate, and I'm so hungry. And I mean, it's pretty to look at, but I want to eat, right? I want something that's going to fill me up. If I wanted art, I would go to the art museum. I want food, right? It's that kind of disappointment that the things of this world bring us, right? We go out and get them, but there's so much plate. It just don't fill us up, does it? It just doesn't fill that hole in our heart, that need in our heart that needs to be filled. And you know why it doesn't fill that? Because that's a God-sized hole. That's a God-sized void that only can be filled by God. Not by things of this world. You can take the biggest boat and try to cram it in there, and it's not going to fill that void. You can take the fanciest house, fill with the nicest furniture, and it's not going to fill that void. Because that's a God void. That's a void that needs a God relationship to fill it. And only when you seek that relationship, only when we go and meet God where He's at, when we try to find out what God sees as right and just, and try to meet Him there, and try to conform our lives to something that is as similar to what He wants as we can get. Because we're never going to be perfect, right? We're not. None of us are perfect. But what we can do is strive to be righteous. What we can do is seek to be as God-like or in tune with God as we can and carry that out in our daily lives. And it's then when we do that, when we invite Christ into our lives, when we embrace that relationship, when we embrace that philosophy of love God with what? All your heart, mind, soul, strength, with everything you got, when you're all in, when we're seeking that righteousness, then that hole will be filled. Then we will be made whole. How do I know that? Well, it tells me right there. Because it says what? You will be filled. It doesn't say, well, you might be filled. It said, it might be a lot of plate. It doesn't say that. It says, you will be filled. Right? In other words, God will meet your need. You will finally be happy. You will be satisfied. Because God will have filled the God-sized hole in your heart. You see, when it comes to thirst, there's only one living water. Isn't that true? The Bible tells us that. You know, you remember when Jesus met the woman at the well? You remember that story? And she asked him, he tells her about a special kind of water, right? A living water, right? In John verse 4:14 says, he tells us about this water, says, but whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a fount of water springing up to eternal life. In other words, that's all the water you're going to need right there. It's going to be a fountain that's going to keep on giving all the days of your life. You see, Jesus is that living water that can fill that hole in your heart. That can fill that need so you will never thirst again. He is the only one who can meet your need. He's not one of many. He's not Buddha's third cousin. He is the one and only Son of God. He is the only way to the Father. He's the one who meets that thirst that we have. Sounds simple, doesn't it? And it is. It is simple. It's not complex. But it's not easy, is it? Simple, but not easy. I wish it was easy. It takes a little work, right? And it takes something else. It takes trust. It takes this thing we call faith. Believing in the unknown. Trusting, putting your life in God's hands. Believing that He will direct your path. And His path is best for you. That's what it takes. Simple. Never easy. Never easy. It reminds me maybe of a story best illustrated about, you may have heard it, a story about Desert Pete. You ever heard the story of Desert Pete? Maybe you haven't. Let me tell it to you again if you haven't. Desert Pete was a man, he was wandering the desert, and he had bottles of water. And he conserved his water as he walked through the desert because, I don't know if you know anything about desert, but there's not a lot of water there. And he knew that. So as he walked the desert, he conserved his water, but eventually it ran out. Now, like most of us, that would create a little bit of what? Panic, right? Because he knew, you know, I know, we know, you need water in the desert. So he continued to wander the desert looking for water. And he finally comes across a pump for a well. And a smile came across his face. And he walked up and he pumped it. And he heard metal grinding against metal. No water. And as he hung his head, he saw a can sitting next to the pump. And then there was a note. And he read the note. It said, "Dear traveler," it said, "you will find, buried in the sand in front of this pump, a bottle of water." It said, "You need to follow the instructions and you will have all the water that you want. You will need to take that bottle of water and pour it into the pump. And the pump, it will serve as a primer. And the water will start coming. And it will flow. And you'll have as much water as you want. You'll be able to wash your face, wash your body. You'll be able to swim in it. There's plenty of water in this well. But you got to pour that water into that pump. He said, now no, you will be tempted to just drink the water. He said, and if you drink the water, you'll be thirsty again. And anybody who comes behind you will not be able to use this well. But if you follow the instructions and pour the water into the pump and pump it, not only will you be able to use it, but before you leave, you need to fill that bottle back up and bury it so the next person will be able to use it. So sure enough, he poured the water in and began to pump. And sure enough, as promised, there was more than enough water to meet his needs. But for him to do that, it took something, didn't it? What if he poured the water in there and nothing happened? It took a little bit of trust, didn't it? Sometimes it takes trust in the unknown, to follow his instructions, to step out on faith, to believe in what the world tells you doesn't make any sense. It makes sense to drink that bottle of water, I'm thirsty. Right? But what the world tells you is a temporary fix to a long-term problem. You see, when Christ comes to you, he offers you that fountain of water that will never run out. But you got to trust him. You got to pour that water in. You got to pour yourself into that commitment, into that relationship, and he will pour himself into you. It takes a little faith, doesn't it? Simple, but never easy. There are many people out there in the world today who are thirsty, who are looking for something to satisfy that void in their heart. You probably run into them every day on the street. And they're looking for worldly answers to a God problem. The problem is they don't know God. They haven't experienced God in the way that God desires for each of us. They haven't entered into that relationship where we give all and he gives all. Because it's an over-the-top type of relationship. It's not like a kind of, sort of, almost maybe I'm committed to every third Sunday. Maybe I'll be here. I'm all in. I'm all in every day of the week. See, when you drink that water, and you enter into that relationship, you're never thirsty. You're never hungry. Because Jesus told us, he'll fill you up. That he's all you need, isn't he? You see, if you're thirsty today, don't need to look any farther. Because Jesus is here today, and he tells you the same thing he told those people then. Blessed are those which hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And all God's people said, Amen.